Hey, what's going on? Welcome to the Doug Show Live. Today we're going to talk about the Google rankings drop for CNN, USA Today, Fortune, a few other places, talking about site reputation. So we'll see how much information we can get. There's a couple stories out there. Let me know in the chat if you could hear me. And this is another one of those situations where there is action happening. There's no algorithmic rollout yet. However, we do see some impact, and there's a story we'll take a look at over at Search Engine Land. We'll look on Twitter. There's always a lot of conversation there, and generally talk about stuff. So let me know what's on your mind out there. I know the last couple weeks there was speculation like, hey, May 5th, May 6th, when this stuff starts to roll out, maybe affiliate sites will get a little more traction again. Maybe they'll get some of the traffic back when these bigger sites, and basically this is Parasite SEO, right? So you get these bigger sites like CNN, USA Today, LA Times, and Outlook India, a few other big ones. There's a lot of them, a lot of sites that do this, but you'll see essentially people just like paying for placement, or the sites themselves are doing some sort of, affiliate SEO or some other thing. A couple good examples are when let's say you're looking for a review for an air purifier, whatever, and then you end up on a review at TechCrunch, or maybe that's a bad example. Is that who it is? No, CNET. Who does all those tech reviews? And then they started doing just like random reviews for stuff they have no expertise in. So you see that where companies are like, oh, we have a ton of authority. We could basically publish average to lower quality content. Sometimes it's better quality, but they end up with a ton of traffic, and they're earning a huge amount of money, and they're able to rank because they have a lot of authority on their site. So a couple quick housekeeping things here. Let me look at my description so everyone is on the same page here. Ranking Revolution Podcast. So that's my new show focusing on SEO and marketing at a professional level. So we're talking like running agencies. We're talking about things that people are concerned about that actually like attend conferences and stuff. And shout out to, I guess, Affiliate Gathering is coming up this weekend. People are probably heading to, is it York? Is that the town? Heading to York to go hang out. Looks like a blast. Don't drink too much. Have a great time out there. Check out Ranking Revolution. I just dropped an interview, the second part of an interview with Jared Bauman from 201 Creative. Is that what it is? Anyway, we talk about YouTube. We talk about newsletters and a few other things in that second conversation. And you'll see there's a bunch of other interviews out there. And I'll be publishing one episode per week. I think I've settled on Wednesdays, although I don't have the schedule settled. And side note, the workflow for this particular show is a little different than my other podcasts. So I haven't turned this over to my VA yet. So I'm like doing all of the editing and the production and some of the other things. There's a little bit more work than a typical Doug Show or Mile High Fi podcast, which I could talk about later at length if people are interested. I put a link for the Search Engine Land article out there. And as you may or may not know, a lot of the news-related things over at Search Engine Land or Roundtable, or I don't know, I forget all of them. There's a couple of them that are basically the same thing from my perspective. There's just a bunch of tweets in there. They like link to tweets, and there's some conversation, some light commentary. It's valuable because it saves you from like going over to X Shout out to SEO Estonia coming up in June. Should be a blast out there. I'm unable to attend this year, but it looks like a lot of fun. A lot of my friends are going to be there. Check that out. And you can download the Side Hustle cheat sheet if you are interested. One thought I had, and I just thought of it earlier today. So I was watching, I think it was Julian Goldie's live stream or two from the other day, and he was talking about sites that were hit by the helpful content update and some options that people have, because the helpful content update seems to have hit sites in a way that they're not recovering. They're not recovering no matter what the people and whatever actions are taking, it's just not working. So he was like, you can, do what you think you need to do and, publish this, better content, improve it, whatever actions you need to take based on a thorough audit. Or you can start a new site. And I, like so many of us, all of us probably, let me know in the chat if you've done this before, where you have domains, you have an idea, and you're like, you know what, I'm not going to do it. And you keep saying that to yourself until you finally buy the domain. And this is where I'm at. It just sits there, and I've had, I've tapered this down, but it's like once per year I'll do this. So in about the end of February or so, I bought a domain. I had an idea to start a new site, and I was like, it'll actually be a micro niche site. I'm only going to cover this one narrow piece of information, and I'm not going to go outside of that. It will be extremely helpful for anyone that lands on that site. They will probably want to read the whole thing, and I'm just going to cover that one part. I had a hope that it might, by the way, I haven't done anything with it. I'm going to get to a point here in a second, and then we'll head over to Search Engine Land to take a look at the article. But my thought was to launch the site, cover this narrow topic pretty well. I would be able to use AI to help with the content, even with the actual, writing of the content, based on my own knowledge, where perhaps I could just use voice typing and talk through a topic, clean it up with AI, write it with AI, go run through it again, make sure there's, subheadings and all the SEO on-page best practices, but essentially just publish content that is going to help, even if somebody found the site through a social media link or something like that. So my thought, here's the conclusion. So I haven't done anything with it, like so many of us. However, I haven't launched a new site that is content focused in a while. So I thought, hey, it would be interesting to take Julian's proposal and start a new site. Or, a lot of people have said this. It's like, hey, new sites seem to be doing okay, even if they're AI content, even if they are average quality content. Basically, those are doing okay because they didn't get impacted by the helpful content update, who these sites seem like maybe they have like a red flag on them, and it's really hard to get that red flag removed. Or you just start a new site, and it could maybe be with the same content. It's brand new. Don't go crazy publishing at a insane rate, but just an average amount of content, normal, and go from there. So that's my thought. My thought is to do that. I have the domain. I have a plan. I have the set of keywords. And I thought it could be interesting, only if people have enough interest in this. I thought it could be interesting to work on this live. I think I could share the site not publicly, not on YouTube, friends. It would be within like my course platform over on Kajabi. And if people are, working, I mean, we could co-work on it where I'm working on it for like 1 hour per day. I'm going to run through it, see how much progress I can make. And I don't know if 1 hour is right, but that kind of fits my work ethic at this point. And then see what happens, see if it ranks and see if it gets traffic. I have no expectations. I wouldn't monetize it in the sort of typical way that we have here on Niche Site Project or the Doug Show. It would probably be for, email list growth, other promotion, other partnerships, but I wouldn't put ads on there. I wouldn't count on SEO traffic specifically, but I think it potentially would show up. If people are interested, leave a comment on the video and let me know. And basically it would be like, you sign up. I would probably make it paid just to keep the jokers out of there and for people to have skin in the game. Maybe even an application process. So there's not people that just go in and then share the site and kind of fuck the whole thing up. I don't want that to happen. Jim says, good day. How's it going? Time for people to jump on the Bing train. Like, what the fuck is up with Google? They are an index. You ask it something and they give you the best answer is not happening. One thing I wrote in my email today to let people know about this live stream was I have moved over to Safari. So last week or the week before, I was like, hey, if you don't like Google, if what they are doing is annoying you, if they've impacted your life, I mean, the results are worse, right? The results are worse. So I moved over to DuckDuckGo. There's not a million fucking ads on there. The results seem fine. And I'm using Safari because I use a Mac and Safari actually runs a little better. The caveat, and I haven't decided what I'm going to do, but for Google products, I'm still using Chrome. I think it would be fine if I did hop over to Safari for everything. But at this point in time, I haven't pulled the trigger all the way. It wouldn't be a major issue or anything like that. I think all the performance is probably the same. I hear the memory management on Safari is a little bit better than Chrome, but it's the little thing that I could do is just not use Google anymore. There's some things, right, I need to, perhaps check to see what's ranking or how things are behaving and see what the results are like. But after the last few updates and, just testing it out, I haven't used DuckDuckGo on a regular basis in the past. So I'm going to see how that goes. And it has been good. It has been good to see how Google results look. And I think like most people have been documenting pretty well. The results are generally worse, but it depends on what you're searching for. Of course, sometimes it's not going to matter. But the thing is, there's just a shitload of ads on there, like no matter what you're searching for. And Jim is smart. Jim says, everybody type in site reputation abuse to help Doug's algorithm. Yeah. So let's hop over to the story here and just have a look at it. Again, this is one of those situations. I try not to do this too much, but, I don't have inside information, which should not be surprising for anyone here. I don't have inside information, so we just have the story here from Search Engine Land. Shout out to Barry Schwartz, and we'll just kind of go through it a little bit here. So Google has started the enforcement of the new site reputation abuse by deranking or deindexing portions of websites from the index. And it seems to have launched on May 6th, a couple days ago on Monday, and impacting large sites such as CNN, USA Today, Fortune, and the LA Times. And they were seeing their coupon directories not ranking for coupon-related keyword phrases. And this is something interesting, right? So as before, right? So Google rolled out their update and at the same, or they were like, hey, we're starting our update. And then they manually penalized a bunch of sites. And speaking of Julian, shout out to Julian and his site out there. I just interviewed him for Ranking Revolution, so that'll be coming out probably in a few weeks. But shout out to his YouTube channel. Do check it out and the stuff that he's doing. But the thing is, like, Julian's website was de-indexed for a little bit, and then they re-indexed it. So it was kind of weird. Like, he had a lot of coverage from a publicity standpoint. It was actually, I think, good for him to show up as like an SEO who was de-indexed, and then, you know, it recovered. Anyway, what we have here is, you know, Google saying, hey, we're not actually we're not doing this on the algorithm, which we'll note here. So Danny Sullivan from Google told Barry on this tweet, we're only doing manual actions right now. The algorithmic component will indeed come, as we've said, but that's not live yet. So this means that you don't have to read between the lines. If they could do it with the algorithm, they would just do it with the algorithm. So they can't do it, and that is interesting. They're just going after these bigger sites. And that means there's a subjective component as well. I mean, there could be a subjective component if you were thinking about the algorithmic enforcement, but in this case, they're just saying, hey, we know these sites were doing this stuff, so we're going to go after them. And we have Laura C. I don't know how to say her last name. U.S. coupon SERPs are starting to change. Many news websites are out of the top 10. And Glenn Gabe says, you're right, I'm seeing the same thing. USA Today, CNN, LA Times are gone for Subway coupons and other queries. So kind of interesting. It's funny they went after coupons up front. All right. And some other sites like Forbes, Wall Street Journal, and others manually blocked the directories from Google spiders before enforcement of the new policy began. So if we remember back in March, Google said, hey, we're really going to come down on Parasite SEO. They called it site reputation abuse. And they said, hey, look out, in 2 months, we're going to do something really big. And then here we are. They did a manual update. Some people have mentioned Google didn't give smaller creators, smaller web publishers, this luxury. They didn't say, back in January, they didn't say, hey, in March, we're going to fuck up y'all's world. This paraphrased of what they might have said. They didn't say anything. They were just like, oh yeah, you know what? Just publish great content. You're going to be all right. Everything's going to be fine. And they just rolled it out started rolling it out in early March there. Okay. Site reputation abuse. Again, this is, if you're just joining in, this is an article by Barry Schwartz over at Search Engine Land. Shout out to Barry. When third-party sites host low-quality content provided by third parties to piggyback on the ranking power of those third-party websites. That rolls off the tongue. Who wrote that part? I don't know if Barry, maybe he copy and pasted it from Google. I don't know. It's a little wordy. I'm just saying it's wordy. A third party might publish payday loan reviews on a trusted educational website to gain ranking, benefit from the site. So essentially you're going to a higher authority website and then you're getting them to publish something. It's been going on for quite a long time and kind of thrown in Google's face for a pretty long time, several years, a few years, right? Such content ranking highly in search can confuse or mislead visitors who may have vastly different expectations for the content on a given website. So if you went to Forbes and there was some kind of adult lubricant review, which maybe we could see if they have that, and you're like, well, this seems odd for Forbes, which I thought was like a financially focused magazine, to have all this information about lube. Just surprising. I'm not sure. And this is just for entertainment purposes. I have no idea if Forbes has those reviews, but we could certainly check and see if it's ranking. So they're going after that. Here's the thing though. So not all third-party content will be considered spam. So Google explains it this way. And I think Barry clearly showed where he was quoting from the different policy areas that Google has released. And I'll put policy in air quotes. Many publications host advertising content that is intended for their regular readers rather than to primarily manipulate search rankings. So they host advertising content. Okay. Sometimes called native advertising or advertorial. This kind of content typically wouldn't confuse regular readers of the publication when they find it on the website or when arriving from Google search results. Okay. So that shouldn't confuse. That's interesting. So it's like if it's an ad, they're okay with it. If it is a native advertising situation, they're okay with it, but they don't want the website to lend its credibility and authority to low quality third parties. Okay. Interesting. So that's a few of the main topic areas. And this was published on May 6th, so it's a couple days old. So there's a little bit more information. It was published at 8:15 p.m. And I think Barry is on the East Coast, so that's probably Eastern time, most likely. Let me hop back to the chat. Oh, Marcus is on. What's going on? Good to see you. And Power Vision says Bing's U.S. market share on the desktop at the end of 2024 is expected to reach 36%. That's amazing. Yeah, in Power Vision, where can you cite your source? Marcus is asking about that as well. And Paula is on. Paula, good to see you here. Yeah, hit the thumbs up if you're enjoying this one. Okay, so some of these bigger sites were hit. And one of the cool things is a lot of this discussion is happening over on X. And it's cool because I'm not part of that situation. So I saw Julian was citing all that stuff, and I know all the cool SEO folks are over there. But I encourage you, don't use Twitter. Don't use X. Stay off of social media. You'll just be happier. All right. Just as a pro tip. But I did pop over here and we can see, actually we could just look directly here as well, where Google Search Liaison said it'll be starting later today. While the policy began yesterday, the enforcement is really kicking off today. And that was on May 6th. And I'll click over here and we could take a quick peek. I will point out a couple of the other tweets that were highlighted in some of the live streams that I was watching to prepare, also in air quotes, for this live stream. So Lily Ray says, my money is on this part being the algorithmic portion of the site reputation abuse, which will happen next. And this is in response to Nick Leroy, who actually another person that I interviewed for Ranking Revolution. People, check out the pod, please. You can subscribe to it on YouTube. You can download it on your favorite podcast player. And I got some great interviews coming up. So anyway, interviewed Nick. And Nick on May 7th, I get messed up with the threads on here. It's just like, it should be easy to use, but you guys are witnessing how incompetent I am. Look, I can do it. You can do it too. Basically, like I click on a tweet and then it's in response to something. And then I'm like reading the tweet that is the response as if it was the original one. And then when I'm like, I just want to see the fucking thread here with the replies, I don't want to have to like dive into the whole thing here. Okay. We're back on track, people. All right, Nick. Shout out to Nick. So Nick says, Google is taking manual actions against the Parasite sites, and he closely watches the mattress SERP, which is dominated by high output affiliate offers. No changes as of this morning. Wirecutter and CNNers are still the top 2 listings. Top 10 Business Insider, Wired, and CNET. So perfect example. Yeah, maybe the Wirecutter, maybe they're doing decent reviews, right? All those New York Times bottom. But CNN and maybe Business Insider, Wired, and CNET, like, I don't know. I don't think of Business Insider as the mattress authority out there, but maybe they are. Everyone sleeps. But anyway, see, and then I lost the thread that I was actually trying to read. So Lily in response says, my money is on on this part being the algorithmic portion of the site reputation abuse, which will happen next. Not predicting which sites will get hit. I just think there are multiple flavors and implementations of Parasite SEO. I think that's true as well. I understand why the first batch was done with manual actions. And she also speculates, I saw certain offending site subfolders moving up and down in the recent weeks, and I think Google was testing this already. So we'll see. And I would say, we really, as before, we don't know what they're going to do in I would say the faith that people have in, as like site owners, the faith that people have in Google and like trusting Google for rankings and traffic completely eroded. And I would say there's a lot of ill will. I personally wasn't, my revenue wasn't impacted. My day-to-day is not impacted. So it's an interesting thing to see unfold. And I think, people are looking at their business models and thinking about how they can have a more protected, a more robust business model in general. And it's pretty tough if you're looking at really the content site world, because it's changed so much and there's a ton of churn. I mean, I think Google search market share is, the data is showing it's going down, and I know it's a pretty small percentage, but at the end of the day, like that's still probably, hundreds of millions of dollars if you look at it in aggregate. So we'll see how it plays out. But if people don't find what they're looking for, and then they start talking to folks, and we say, hey, you know what, use DuckDuckGo. They're not taking your data. They're not watching everything you're doing. And there's not all these ads everywhere. And you could actually find what you're looking for. And if you don't want, I know some people want Reddit results. Actually, there was a big debate, I think a couple weeks ago. People were like, I do want Reddit results. Blew my fucking mind. I don't find much good information on Reddit, but other people do. They were like, I want to go to Reddit. So either it's going to work or it's not going to work. People will vote with their actions. Basically, if people are not seeing the results they want, then they're going to go somewhere else. Or, basically, if you're on Google and let's say the results are actually okay, there's just like so many ads that some people will opt out and be like, oh, this is easy for me to go to another search engine. And I think in Safari, like one of the default choices is DuckDuckGo. So, you would have to go select it. But imagine if like Apple rolls out their search engine, if they do, right? If they have one, and other people are moving away from Google, there could be a huge shift, or more people using Bing, like Power Vision mentioned here. All right. And then the Hoth wrote a little bit on just going back. So this was published on April 19th. So if you do want to follow along with the unfolding of all of this, and actually I interviewed Rachel. I believe she's the CMO. I can't remember. Senior director, CMO, something high in the marketing area for the Hoth, but interviewed her over on Ranking Revolution as well. And what they said, so Google said that they would wipe out 40% of the spam currently in its index in relation to the March update. And part of that was through the site reputation abuse. And the thing is, I wonder also about the different versions, the different flavors of the site reputation abuse, of Parasite SEO, because, it's a little bit different if someone, let's say, they're trying to rank for some sort of like online gambling or something like that. They're trying to rank for that. They go to a bigger website. They pay them X $1,000 to have a post published. They rank that post on a big website and they're making a lot of money. They have their affiliate link in there. So there's that version of it. But there's also, I think the owners of some sites, we mentioned before, maybe like CNN or maybe Fortune. It was one of the sites that was hit. Let me keep going back here. Make sure I'm looking at so Fortune, right? Should be like finance related. But if they have a bunch of reviews on like air purifiers, and then there's some website that, it's some PhD researcher who knows all about air quality. They're an environmental engineer and they have a website, and then they just got wiped out. I'm making up this example, by the way. But you would think the PhD with an environmental engineering background should rank better and should be more knowledgeable than someone at Fortune, perhaps, unless I'm missing something. But in that case, right, it's the actual site looking and they're like, we can rank for this stuff. We can just publish a list of products and basically a paragraph and list these products out and make a huge amount of money, and we can get AI to do it. Of course they're gonna do that as the competition is high and it's a very clear ROI on those specific products or those pages, and they're able to do it. Anyway, there's different flavors. So I'm curious to see how that plays out, because on the other side of it, right, like New York Times, they cover, and all of the news sites, they cover so many different topics. They could be considered authoritative in many different areas, but New York Times, right, they sort of like strategically position themselves to be extremely authoritative in all review stuff because they bought the Wirecutter. So they also mention here, Rachel mentions the official date was May 5th. That's when Google was going to start rolling out the site reputation abuse policy. And Google wanted to give site owners a fair warning. And I believe, right, so these were generally like the bigger sites, the authoritative sites. And like most things, if you follow the money, you kind of figure out what the motivations are. I would guess that either the big websites are owned by powerful companies and powerful people, and you don't necessarily want to surprise them and completely fuck them over. Google at least said, hey, we're going to give you 2 months on this. So if a big, and I'm talking like companies that own, like holding companies that own multiple media companies and newspapers and stuff, or individuals that are really powerful and they own a bunch of these corporations, at least Google can say, hey, we gave you guys like 2 months warning, so go talk to your team. We told you what we were going to do, so it's your own problem. Like, we can potentially work with you. So that's one aspect, right? So the big websites are owned by powerful people or powerful companies. The other would be the companies actually run ads on like with Google. So they pay money to advertise elsewhere, or they're closely tied and related to the ad team. So those would be the couple things that could make a difference because they're tied to the money and revenue in some capacity. So other thing, Glenn Alsop, this is another tweet. So it's related to the coupon focused terms. So Glenn was monitoring 2,500 coupon focused terms to see what changes the site reputation abuse update would do. So the early insights are these. So Glenn's been tracking a lot of the non-coupon third-party content that he was going to display that hasn't been hit, but it feels like outing them, so he wasn't going to do that. There's plenty of examples out there that don't appear to have been impacted, if they will be at all. Again, this is like, I think it was posted like a day or two ago, so more things could have happened by now. And he gives credit to a couple folks. So it's just an example of what he noticed out there. So here is the screen grab again. Shout out to Glenn. But you can see a bunch of these were hit and several were no index, but you can see a lot of these sites were impacted. So very interesting. I mean, these are some of the biggest ones on the internet, and they are, some of the biggest sites. So it's interesting. And it's, what else is interesting is like, so we got GQ and Fortune, and they no indexed their coupon area, and Forbes, Wall Street Journal, and Sports Illustrated, they took it down. It appears that those are, proactive by the site owners versus the sites that were hit. Obviously, they were just like, all right, we're just going to see what happens. So, all right, any questions out there? Has anyone seen impacts on their sites, getting more traffic or anything like that? As I mentioned before, it's really just best to stay off of Twitter. But there's some news over there. It'll just distract you people, right? I mean, I'll pop over there. I'm like, oh, I need to like look something up, see if someone posted something. And then I realize that I'm just scrolling and I'm like, oh, this is an interesting tweet right here. And then I see it's an ad and it's like, you won't believe what this 90 star looks like now. And then I go over there and that's nonsense. And then if you have been watching for a few minutes, you can see I don't even know how to navigate on X. I find a tweet, click on it, and then I'm like, oh, is this the beginning of the thread or the end? It's just not user friendly. Am I an idiot on that? And if you're joining in now, just want to mention or really encourage everyone to take a look at the original article that I shared at the beginning over at Search Engine Land. If you want to like follow some of the tweets and dig deeper, you should also check out Ranking Revolution, my new podcast. I do interviews with SEO and marketing experts. I have some great ones. I just published the one part 2 with Jared Bauman, who's the host of the Niche Pursuits podcast. And it's called Weekend Growth. He has a YouTube channel out there. Great interview with him. And we actually talk about newsletters and working on YouTube. An interesting thing with Jared, not to spoil the interview. This doesn't spoil the interview. It's a wonderful conversation. But he was a professional photographer for a very long time, like 20 years, 15. I mean, he's still a photographer out there. But he has an eye for composition. He has camera gear, and he was also a public speaker. He is a public speaker, but he would go on tour and do speaking gigs like across the country consistently for years. And he's a good speaker, and he knows composition and camera gear and lighting. And those are, two very key components that you need to understand for YouTube. And he's a podcast host, right? So he has three things that make him ultra qualified, but we still talk about the challenges of producing on YouTube. So very interesting to hear, why he wants to be a creator on YouTube and what he's trying to do with weekend growth. So check out the conversation over there. Leave a comment. It always helps out. Leave a review, all that kind of stuff. All right. Marcus mentions, thanks for popping in. Marcus says, some of my pages got hit hard from position 1 to 75 or so. Some are climbing back. One is at position 25 right now. And Marcus says, went to 1 to 69 to 30 to 25. And he also mentions that it's in the Dutch market and there are no other in-depth articles about the topic. So Google currently ranks crap at the top of the SERPs. I hope I can climb back to number 1. It's the best content. And Marcus says, I know it's easy to say that something is the best, but the competition is really bad. It's easy to see. And I think, with competitive areas, let me get a cough drop. With competitive queries, it's tough. And I hear people, they're like, it is the best content. And I go look and I'm like, there's 20 of them that are comparable. And, it's a lot of good content out there. But there are plenty of instances like you're talking about, Marcus, where you're like, there's no other content about this. Like there's no other articles about this. I should be ranking number 1 because there's not other information about it. But for some reason, Google has their head up their ass and they're like, oh no, this is definitely, these are better results. And they got the mouthpieces over on X. I believe they used to have a lot of the sort of corporate SEO folks, because they had relationships. I think they would say, hey, I imagine they had relationships. I have no idea where they would have like professional relationships, like Barry writes over at Search Engine Land or runs the whole thing. I'm not sure. Did he found it? I don't know. But like high level people that need to get information from the public relation folks of the search team. So they have like a pleasant relationship. So I think some of the corporate SEO types were like kind of on board. They were like, yeah, we just follow these guidelines and blah, blah, blah. I think now they're like, all right, this stuff is crazy. Like there's clearly like good content. Travel is one that's pointed out often. It's easy to see like people that had really good travel sites or even lifestyle related sites. Cause I would say like a van life type article or website or platform in general. If they're living on the road and they're producing content across many platforms, it's probably pretty good. They kind of know what they're doing, but they have had many issues. There was an interview I did not too long ago. I think it was Kristen Haynes. I think that was her name. Is her name. Let me see if I can find it. Very close. Hold on. Yeah, Kristen Haynes. She was making $25K a month, and then the helpful content update hit her site. She was a former journalist, so conceivably, she was one of the best writers in the space because she wrote for newspapers for years before she started writing about her own experiences with, being a digital nomad, life on the road, van life, blah, 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 right? So she got hit. It was a very popular interview. I'll actually put a link in the chat here just because people can check it out later. But I published it on January 29th, by the way, if people want to go back. But the thing is, like, her site got hit, and travel is, again, that's an easy one to point out, where it's like these people are obviously doing the thing that they're talking about, but some other, random results are ranking. And Marcus says about the term that he told us that bounced from number 1 to 70 to 30 is not even a competitive term. All right, there's a bunch of people that just popped on in the last few minutes. So earlier, when there were only like 3 people on, I started to mention an idea that I had, which I shouldn't even say it because I think y'all are going to make me do it. But only if you leave comments out there. You can let me know in the chat, but leave comments and I'll see it. So I'll tell the abbreviated version. Like so many of us, I get an idea for a website, for a content site, a little project, and then I buy a domain and then it sits there. And I'm down to about 1 per year. And this one hit early, it hit in February. And my thought is to start a new site. It sounds like a lot of sites, or actually, to my knowledge, like all the sites hit by helpful content update, it's generally the word on the street is none of the sites hit by helpful content update have recovered. They have some sort of like a black flag on them, and they are, they're toxic for some reason. So many folks have said, if you start a new site, it doesn't have that issue, and maybe you're better off just taking the content and starting a new site or starting a brand new site and just move on. So I had an idea because I haven't started a new site in a little while. The core idea is, micro niche site. Like, I always frown on the term, but literally I'm covering one topic. That is it. It's something I know a lot about. I cover the one topic. I cover it well. I can use AI to some extent, even for some of the core writing, just because I could use voice typing and save a lot of time that way and just dictate out the high points, fill in the gaps, and see what happens. And it would be a brand new site. I don't know if it would be more than 50 pages. That might be it. It might be around 50 keywords that I would go after. I would have, topical authority in mind, again, where I just cover that portion of what I want to cover and potentially, do it in a way that people could follow along. It would be within my course platform and not publicly, because basically if you do anything publicly, a bunch of people are going to screw it up. It's also very well known. And I think it might actually work. I don't know if people are searching for the term, but it would be a very narrow group of people that are searching for it. So that is the thought. And if you are interested in doing that, following along, if you're working on a site, if you're like, hey, I want to work on a small scale project, maybe you have your own idea for a micro niche site, and then you're like, I'm going to launch it. I'm going to use AI. You don't have to use AI. You can write it from scratch. I'm not going to be aiming for any word count or anything. I will make everything as short as it needs to be. I will make it exactly what I would want to read. Like if I was reading a book, you don't want to have a whole bunch of extra shit in there. You just want the core ideas that you need to communicate for that chapter, for that section, for the overall book. Don't make it longer than it needs to be. So I wouldn't even think about the search engine, which, here's the twist. At the end of the day, like that's actually what Google wants, right? if you peel back all the nonsense and the guidelines, if you're like, hey, I'm just writing to get this information out because I think it's helpful, that's actually what they want. It's the devious way. All right. We got this to Christo Red Social Catalika. Hello, Doug. What you think about this to rank faster? Get low KD with high volume from competition and make content for the keywords. I'm testing it for 1 month and see some traffic coming already. Well, if you see some traffic coming already, sounds good. So you're saying low keyword difficulty with high volume. So sure. I mean, if it's working, do it. The interesting part is if you go with low keyword difficulty and high volume, well, those are the magic ones that everyone wants to do. So usually those are like higher competition, but occasionally you do find one that's lower competition. If you are finding that it's working, then keep doing it. You don't need me to tell you to keep doing it. If it's working, then just keep doing it. But generally, those are the things those are the kind of keywords, those are the kind of topics that are highly competitive because everyone wants high volume, low competition. It's like, I want high profit. I don't want to work much. I want to do it in a really short amount of time. I only want to work 1 hour per week. Yeah, I mean, everyone wants to do that. So it tends to be high competition. Thus, it becomes higher difficulty. So if you've found something that works well, then you should run with it and don't tell anyone about it. Don't do a public case study. Don't spread yourself thin. Just focus on that and keep doing it more and more and harder, and that'll be a great way to approach it. And I think honestly, the keyword and micro niche that I'm looking at, it's not high volume at all. It's like low competition, low volume, low difficulty in a general sense. However, when you peel back some of the details and I look at what is ranking, I can see, even though it appears to be lower difficulty and lower competition, the competition is actually like more than I would expect. So the thing is, like I said, if I'm only focusing on like this super narrow thing and I keep the scope static and the scope very reasonable, then it should be okay. All right, as we're wrapping up, I'm going to give another shout out to a couple things here. Number one, if you're not on the email list for Niche Site Project, you could follow the link in the description. It is listed as YouTube notification. So before I do the live streams, usually a few hours beforehand in the morning, I'll send an email that says, hey, I'm doing a live stream. Here's the general topic. Sometimes I have a guest. I may send it a couple days early, but generally, if you're on the email list, you'll get some information. The other is my new podcast, Ranking Revolution, which I've mentioned several times, but it's really good. And it's a more advanced look at some of the similar topics that I actually talk about here on the Doug Show. It's really aimed at professionals, but you can certainly learn, especially if you're like a more advanced practitioner or SEO in general. And I think I can show you the channel and you can see some of the stuff. It's a Ranking Revolution podcast. And just did the interview with Jared Bauman. And you'll notice the interviews are 2 parts. So I was trying to do shorter episodes. Actually, Jared and I, we could just talk for a very long time. So we went a little bit longer. But I'm trying to keep many of the episodes around 20 to 30 minutes a piece. So they're a little more bite-sized. Thus, some of the episodes are pretty short, like 20 minutes or so. And we cover 2 main topics, so it's pretty easy to separate it out. You'll see a few of the episodes actually got some pretty good views out there. So Ricky Kessler and Spencer had some of the highest, and then Victor Karpenko. I didn't know him before, but he is pretty popular as well. And another great one, I hope the one with Jason Barnard takes off. We had a great time chatting as well. SEO Jesus, we got Tim Schmidt out there too. Sean Markey. Oh yeah, there's Rachel Hernandez from the Hoth. So definitely check it out. And we have Marcus mentioning that you're enjoying it so far. Thanks a lot. And I also have a couple like solo episodes. I'm going to actually try to make those something like 30% of the show, but I'm just a little behind. But in this one here, see, the thing is they're short. So this one's only 7:51. So under 10 minutes, and I talk about luck as an SEO component. And the other one is your greatest strength. It could also be like one of the issues that you have. So I talk about that. And this one's 10 minutes. So there's some shorter form solo episodes as well. And it'll really help me out if you hop over and watch a few videos, leave a comment. It doesn't matter what you say. It could be positive or negative or neutral, just a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And then the audio podcast, also very helpful if you subscribe and download it. And I'll actually probably be doing some sort of a promotion and push for people on the audio side too, to get some reviews out there. And I really appreciate the support. I think that's the main stuff I wanted to cover. And I think that's it for today. So thanks everybody for popping on. Be sure you sign up for the email list so you're notified. I know Google occasionally sends out notifications like, hey, this channel's live, or maybe your app alerts you, but a lot of times it's late and you don't see it in time. So I try to send out that notification a few hours ahead of time. Have a great week out there, and we'll catch you on the next episode.